From the creators who brought you RuPaul's Drag Race and $1 Million Listing, this is World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Hello everyone and welcome to this week's edition of the Wow Report, where we count down the top 10 things of the week that make us go
wow.
I am co-founder of World of Wonder, Fenton Bailey, joined by our Chief Creative Officer, Tom Campbell.
Wonderful to be here.
Lovely to see you. And best-selling author, host of the Wow podcast, Night Fever, James St. James.
How do you do?
Oh, and Blake too, of course, Blake.
Hi.
Hey, let's start the countdown at number 10, Tom.
Number 10.
I have a new favorite show on television. You know how rare that is for me.
Yes.
I just want to give shout outs. I'm still enjoying Only Murders in the Building. I'm still loving The English Teacher. But on Netflix, which is not always the place I find love, there is the show. It's relatively new. It's called Nobody Wants This. Have you heard about it?
Oh, yeah, with Adam Brody.
With Adam Brody and the fabulous Kristen Bell. Here's the wow connection. It's light, but it's real. It was created by Erin Foster. Erin Foster we met through Nicole Richie on Candidly Nicole. And she's one of David I think she's like, she and her sister, and she has siblings, but they are David Foster's their father from his first marriage, and they're kind of the forgotten, Fosters, if you will. But she and her sister Sarah had a show on VH1 called Barely Famous that was loosely based on that. It was hilarious and took down Hollywood, and like that is based on her life and her relationship with her sister. This show, which is a rom-com series, is about the main character, played by Kristen Bell, spent a year as a lesbian. I happen to know Czech. That's true with our lovely Erin.
Why a year?
Just to experiment. Does a podcast with her sister. They work together in the show. And in the past few years, I found out after Googling that Erin married a Jewish man and converted to Judaism for him. Guess what this thing is about? It's Adam Brody, Kristen Bell, they meet cute. He's a rabbi. She is a sex podcaster. But you know how people use podcasts badly? This is actually a really good use of a podcast. And Adam Brody's goofy brother is played by Timothy Simmons. You know him. He played Jonah Ryan in Veep, the big gawky guy that everybody hated.
Oh, yeah, sure.
And so it's this, and Justin Lupe, who was in Succession, she's the one who married Connor. You remember her?
Oh, yeah.
She plays Kristen Bell's sister. So it's kind of a really powerful cast. Also, Tova Fedsha, is that how you say her name? The fabulous Broadway artist.
Oh, Tova. It's a fabulous name, right?
Yes, it's Fedsha. Yes, but she plays Adam Brody's overprotective mother. She's fantastic. And it's being touted as reinventing the rom-com. Like rom-coms have just been flat and boring. And because it's a series, and I just have to say that it's a slow burn. They meet, they have all the intellectual knowledge we have now about why people shouldn't be together, why things won't work, but they play it out really well. And there is a kiss that you were waiting for by the end of the second episode that I felt in every cell of my body. It was the best romantic kiss I may have ever seen portrayed on movies or television.
Wow.
It's up there with when, in a different way, but when Elizabeth Taylor and Montgomery Clift kiss in A Place in the Sun. It's just like, I was just like breathless.
A reference that all of our viewers will immediately
they
get.
should. Place in the Sun, Elizabeth Taylor.
Does this kiss refer to the key art? Because the key art on socials is very much the two faces, like right about to kiss.
That's the moment. That's when I was in hook, line, and sinker. I haven't finished it yet, so don't spoil it for anyone.
I can't. I've just seen the key art. Like it's just a still of two faces right next to each other about to kiss. You think, right?
Well, I am so excited for Adam Brody to be back on television and to be in a romantic lead, because that, on the OC and Gilmore Girls, he was so lovable and so likable, and I love him so much. I love Kristen Bell so much, so I'm so happy.
Yes, and I have to admit, I don't think I've ever really seen Kristen Bell in anything.
Oh, Well, you should go back and do
Veronica Mars.
Yeah, it is. It's a good series.
right.
It really is a good series to binge.
But and then just my one takeaway note is that they have reinvented the B-roll in that, you know what the Kardashians do with the West Side, Malibu, and Calabasas, how it's just like, half the show is just like transition shots. They do the same thing, but it's Highland Park, Eagle Rock. I feel all the outdoor scenes were shot in Vermont, and I know just where they're at. It's very exciting. It's very exciting. That's where the kiss takes place as an Uber comes up to take her away. And then somebody wrote this, I think Vulture said, just to cap it up, nobody wants this. Name of the show is the first show with without a murder in it to extract genuine narrative utility from its protagonist being a podcaster. And the first show in far too long to make good use of Adam Brody's specific charisma. So there you are.
Oh, specific charisma is exactly what it is. It's a very specific charisma.
And that's on HBO, right?
No, it's on Netflix. And I'm always skeptical of, like, no offense, but the Nicole Kidman rom-com, the Brooke Shields rom-com, like, this is so fresh. And I owe it all to Erin Foster, who's one of I've not spent that much time working with her or next to her or adjacent to her, but she's so genuinely funny and has a way of cutting through the bullshit. And this series is a representation of that. And I wish her continued success. And oh, that kiss. Oh, that kiss.
What?
Can you? I got your motor running.
Why? What? Tell
they aren't meant to be together. And like, again, this is the second episode, but they aren't meant to be together. There's every reason they should be apart. They're saying goodbye and Uber's. It's just like the whole setup. And then when it happens, and then it happens again. And, it's just such an earned kiss. It's such an earned kiss. Oh, and maybe I'm just super lonely, but
everybody they both have the ability to sell it. Is what it is. They're both charismatic and gorgeous people. They're good to look at, and you just love them so much from their past work.
Exactly, it's a great cast.
Nobody wants is streaming now on Netflix. Number 9, James.
Number 9.
Joker 2, Folie à Deux.
You saw it?
Starring Joaquin Phoenix and Lady Gaga. It is bombing terribly. Everyone hates it. I went to the theater. People were walking out left and right. I happened to be the 1% that loved it. I loved it. I thought it was the best movie I've seen.
Wait, one thing. How did you get to the theater? Because reading the reviews, had you read the reviews before you went?
Yeah, sure.
And how did you get yourself there? How did you know to break?
Because I love a musical. I love Lady Gaga. I loved the Joker. How am I not? I am the target audience right there. And the music, Tom, is the American Songbook. I know that right from the beginning. Lady Gaga singing the American Songbook. I'm there. I love it. Now, it is a musical, and people hate musicals, which explains why everybody was furious with it walking out. They maybe didn't know that it was a musical, and it's not a happy musical. It is not a joyous musical. This is Spring Awakening. This is Evita. This is Oliver, Cabaret, Les Mis. This is a dark vision of musicals.
And the Joker, the first one, was not a musical, but it was dark.
It was dark. And if the Joker was Taxi Driver meets King of Comedy, remember?
Okay, yep.
This is Pennies from Heaven meets All That Jazz.
Well, that sounds great.
Yeah, as his world keeps getting darker and darker, he keeps imagining bigger and bigger musical numbers that are happening, and you're watching him dissociate in real time. Now, the problem is, early on, there's a scene where Harley Quinn is helping the Joker escape from prison. And they get to the front of the gate and they're almost out. And you keep thinking, well, this is a great place for the movie to go. The Joker and Harley are going to go on a rampage and there's going to be singing and dancing as they did it. But no, he gets pulled back into the prison. And the last half of the movie is set in a trial.
A trial. I've heard the trial goes on for too long.
The trial goes on forever and ever and ever. And it's a missed opportunity right there. Another missed opportunity. There's a very sweet gay moment that happens where there's this, very early on, Arthur Fleck is in the prison yard and it's raining and everybody's, walking in the circle. And this young kid, this young boy comes up to him. He's like, in his early 20s, cute boy. And he's talking to Arthur, and he says that he's never gotten any affection in his life, and nobody has ever even kissed him. He's never been kissed in his entire life. And Arthur leans over and very sweetly kisses him on the lips. And from that moment on, this kid is just smitten with Arthur. And I would have liked to have seen more of that relationship. The boy's name is Ricky, and someday we'll have a talk about what happens to Ricky. The spoiler, but I can't do it right now.
Don't do it.
The movie's too young. But anyway, like I said, I enjoyed it. I think you should watch Pennies from Heaven, because that's the prototype for this.
Yep.
It's a fantastic movie, and that maybe will get you in the mood for Joker 2, because it is the same setup where, as his life gets worse and worse.
Because I've been reading so much about it, and they're just saying, it's just for the Joker 1 audience, this is too much of a left turn.
Yeah, it is. And I have a feeling this is going to be a 3-part series, like the Batman was 3 parts. The Christopher Nolan Batman was 3 movies. I have a feeling this is going to be a 3rd movie, and that it's going to take off. They're going to go off and have the blowing up everybody. It's going to be what people want, and this is the one in the middle that they had to get through.
And Lady Gaga has an album out.
Yes.
Which is the American Songbook, because it's inspired by it's called Harlequin. It's inspired by the movie.
Yeah. And like I said, she is, she's good. She's very, very good. And he's fantastic. And they know, and the two of them together are, I sent you the one Sonny and Cher number that they do,
yes,
so good. And when you see it, it just looks so fantastic.
I just wonder what kind of behind the scenes bloodletting is going on, in terms of who's going to take the blame for this. And because you're confident there'll be a 3rd one, but with box office this bad, I'm not sure that there will be.
Well, no, but I'll tell you something. Zaslav's hands are all over this, and Zaslav famously did not give it a screening for anyone. He was for the press or whatever like that, because he was so convinced about this. He's always wrong about everything.
But the director is Todd Phillips, right? Who did the Hang? He's made them billions and billions of dollars. So maybe.
And Zaslav is behind this. Zaslav said that he loved it, so I think he will.
My last little aside is there is one new song on the Gaga album that's inspired by this movie called "Happy Mistake," which is not a standard. That's one of the most beautiful songs. Happy Mistake. If it's not playing on the radio, find it and play it. It reminds me of why I love Lady Gaga, and I love her voice, and I love what she does with interpretation.
The problem with it too is there's like 20 songs they could have just done with 10, and they don't do the whole song, and they sort of stop it halfway through. I think if they had done the whole song and only done 10 of them, it might have been a little more palatable for people.
Well, that's Joker, Folie, Deux in theaters now, but not, I suspect, for very much longer.
Oh, but you should see it on a big screen. You don't want to see it on a little screen.
No. Well, okay. Number 8.
Number 8.
No other way to say this. She ate his ashes. Occasionally I do scroll in the middle of the night, the Daily Mail, just to see what the right wing is thinking.
I do the same thing.
And I have to say, more often than not, something completely unexpected pops up, like a headline. How can you resist that as a headline? So it turns out She Ate His Ashes it's sort of a preview of a book called The Widow's Guide to Dead Bastards. I mean, I think you probably have an idea of how this story is going to unfold. But the article begins, Jessica Waite's perfect marriage perished long before the abrupt death of her husband. She just didn't know it. So Sean, her husband of 17 years, they had a kid, a lovely, happy life, died on a business trip, had a heart attack to Texas. And she opened his iPad because she was looking for the phone number of the Houston hospital where his body was being stored. I don't know why he would have kept the address where his body was going to be. Details. But so as she put in HO into the iPad search, up came Houston escorts. And that led to a night curating a sprawling collection of depraved images. and a discovery of her husband's infidelity on an industrial scale. I mean, they met in Japan. They were happy they had a kid. They came back to Canada. And this is where I think something. So she's living in Calgary with the kid, but he had to take a job as a manager in Denver, Colorado. So he was gone most of the week. I mean, I don't know. Like, she maintained the family home. It seems like that. What you might have had an inkling that something was off.
This is why I'm single, but I always think people are cheating on me. Keep going.
Well, it's men. Isn't that what men do?
Yes. Yes.
And anyway, you know, the article, you know, loves to like dig a, you know, then she discovered itemized receipts, apparently because she was trying to get hotel expenses reclaimed from the company because it was a business trip, but only to discover that, you know, 2 bottles of Prosecco, 2 pizzas, and he was taking escorts to the room. And then she found a hard drive of his that she plugged in, and she called it the Matrix of Porn. So it's not all bad because she wrote this book. But I've sort of buried the lead, of course, which is that she, in the course of this sort of process, is, you know, discovering that her husband was not an angel and gets so angry. She takes some of the ashes and takes them out in the little garden and mixes them with dog feces. Well, okay. I mean, it must have been the family dog, and that's not a nice thing to do to the family dog. I don't know. It's just an odd thing.
The dog isn't eating his feces, so it's just
do that, James. Actually, so
oh.
Well, anyway, but then the next paragraph is she says, "Well, I've desecrated my husband's memory. Why don't I go the next step?" And that's when she says, "The remains feel dry against my fingertips, coarser than baking powder, grainier than salt." And then she says, in one of the strangest set of tasting notes you're ever likely to read, that's the commentary, "They mix with the teary water a mineral mud on the back of my tongue. I swallow." Yes, you might well cough. So there, she ate his ashes, and I suppose it had a healing effect, or because she ended up writing this book, and she found herself plunged into this world of pornography that she then claimed was sort of rewiring her brain, because she was in the audience of a high school play when, disturbingly, quote, she found herself imagining one of the schoolgirl actresses naked.
What?
She's a wacko.
That's no good. Now you've lost me. I was on board the whole time, and now you've lost me.
I just checked while you're talking to that eating your husband's ashes is a paleo. It's good for paleo.
Well, I'm thinking, diet. You know, that in ancient times, you know, you had like Incans or whatever that would devour their enemy, and they would take their strength from their, you know, from the enemy's bones or whatever they would eat, you know, or you would eat a loved one to keep them up as a part of you or something like that. That just sort of seems like something I remember reading about with. So I don't think it's that weird. And if you remember, who's McCall was going to sniff his dad's ashes.
So cannibalism, isn't that weird?
No, cannibalism, no, but that's that same thing where, you know, I mean, it's like you're trying to either ingest your enemy or you're trying to keep a loved one. I don't think that's weird at all.
I bite my nails. Does that count?
There you go. Yes, you were. It's an act, and like, you know, sometimes Fenton, didn't you used to eat the little skin on the side of your thumb, and that's why you always have to.
Yeah.
So it's all.
I think Carrie Fisher did that too, so I feel in good company.
I want to reframe this. Infidelity is a mental health issue. It's not like he's an evil. People are so shocked that people
he
cheat.
was a loving husband. He was a good dad. Like. It's like, okay.
So wait a minute. You're saying that if it's okay if you're a good dad for you to go have hookers and
I'm just saying that it's not necessarily done about it. It's not about her. It's about him and about something he lacked, something he needed, something he wasn't balanced about.
The big red flag is, like you say, Fenton, that if you have a husband who spends 5 days a week in another state, you know something's going on. You know he's getting something on the side.
Right, or maybe have an open marriage or something. I don't think these
monogamy seems a little old-fashioned. Sorry,
and I just will. We do have Blake is telling me we have to go to break, but I will just say, as with most things with the Daily Mail, I felt incredibly misled because I was reading it for her to eat his ashes, and I don't know that a little taste on the tongue is. It feels like a somewhat oversold. That's kind of
well, that is the Daily Mail all over.
Well, there you go. All right, let's take a break. RuPaul's DragCon UK coming up January 10th and 11th in the sort of hangover New Year blues of Christmas. You will want to get tickets to RuPaul's DragCon UK. Like, cool. I always forget the freaking URL.
It's RuPaulsDragCon.com, of course.
How hard was that? We'll be right back.
Everybody Googles. You're okay.
Right. Blake, you got a question?
I do. Taylor Swift just became the richest female musician, according to Forbes. Who did she surpass to become the richest female musician?
We'll have the answer right after the break here on the Wow Report.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake.
And I asked, Taylor Swift just became the richest female musician, according to Forbes. Who did she surpass to become the richest female musician?
Well, you would have to think that it was Rihanna, but Rihanna didn't make all her money she got it from Fenty, but not from music.
Doesn't matter.
So.
Rihanna.
No, maybe. Rihanna. Okay, there you go.
We're counting down the top 10 things of the week that made us go, wow. We've reached number 7. Tom.
Number 7.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am thrilled that Miss Kamala Harris has had a media blitz this past week. She was on The View. She was on Colbert. She was on Call Her Daddy podcast. And most exciting of all for me, ultimately, because I was sort of watching all this, online, was her Howard Stern interview. Who would have thought? Just take a step back, because we're old enough to remember when Howard Stern was one of the most controversial people on the face of the earth. He said what was on his mind. He was thought to be racist and homophobic and all these things, and how we have seen Howard grow over all the years. And he was never, he was a lightning rod, but there was an intellect to him, dare I say, that always sort of got him out of scrapes. And now he's sort of a whole different person. And he even admitted, he goes, Donald Trump was at my wedding. It's like they know each other. He goes, but never did he see him being president. Well, Howard wore a suit to this interview. I don't think I've ever seen Howard Stern in a suit.
I was shocked too, yes.
That didn't have a cutout ass or something. It wasn't with chaps or something.
It wasn't Fart Man.
He played Prince's Batman song because he knew that Kamala loved Prince, so she was playing it for her. And he was listen, this was not a hard-hitting interview, but what Kamala does is, in all these different formats, which again are friendly formats, I grant you that, but she can speak, she can be part of them. She's not like this open sore on America. She's polite, she's intellectual, she's inspiring, she has something to say. It was interesting because Howard set it up. He goes, you don't like talking about yourself. He goes, you are the anti-narcissist. She goes, it's true. She goes, I grew up, you're supposed to be judged by what you do and not what you say. And so just setting it off like that, like, oh my God, we have somebody who actually is a public servant. You know what I'm saying? And, she talks about losing sleep, every night over what's at stake at the, with this election. And Howard mentioned, it was just a good review of what's been going on. How, she did her 60 Minutes interview this week too. So she's high, low, medium, wavy, all over the place. And not enough people, whatever. Donald Trump turned down the 60 Minutes interview. That never happens because he didn't want to be fact checked. We have someone running for president who, I know you know all this, but it just needs to be said once over and over again. And then she framed it, and she's good at framing. She and her people are good. She goes, this is an election about strength versus weakness, and that Trump does not have the strength to stand up to the needs of Americans in foreign policy, with the military, cost of living, building businesses, growth. He does not have what it takes. He kowtows to dictators. He does not care about the economy.
He sent them the COVID test. He sent COVID test to Putin as, and I actually, being flippant, I know, but Michael Moster wrote a piece about his beloved aunt dying of COVID for want of not getting tested. And you suddenly realize, yeah,
people died. People died
because of Trump.
I do want to very quickly say that the MAGA crowd has been driving me a little crazy about this because the week before, Donald Trump had been doing all these broy podcasts. I don't know if you remember, he was on these podcasts that were like all these bro, and they were like, man, that's the way to do it. You reach everybody, you get out there and you talk to the people and the da. And then Kamala does it. And all of a sudden they're like, but she's not doing serious, hard-hitting interviews. This is all fluff. And it's like the same thing they were praising Trump for. They are saying that she is terrible for doing. Like,
I could never see another presidential debate between anybody and be fine. I think they're useless. I think they're bizarre, antiquated theater, and they don't get anything across. And I don't think people even get to speak. They don't even get to express themselves. It's just kind of, anyway. So they went on, and they were just, talking about, like, with the COVID thing, how he's, as she says, I come from the street. You go, you're being played. You're being punked, Mr. Trump, by all these dictators that curry his favor. And, she reminds us, which we know, but this is, again, if I had a former chief of staff, 2 secretaries of defense, his national security advisor, his vice president will not vote for him, says that he would, as a commander in chief, he is unfit and would be dangerous in the office. And then they were talking about the vets and having to recall all of that and how he said prisoner wars are suckers, anyway, but it's just, and then she mentioned Thurgood Marshall as one of her idols. And she said this expression, which I love. She goes, because he wanted to take the passion of the streets into the court, and just talked about her choice to be, in law, to be, to put the bad guys away. And she said, even like when she's a big sister, she's always taking care of people. And that's kind of her way. And then Howard said something, he goes, I'm going to vote for you. I like you, but I'd vote for the wall versus Donald Trump, which I think is also good. And the last fun little button was Walls was on Kimmel. And coming into the second part of the thing off of commercial, they had a montage of Trump going, oh, they say we're weird. I'm not weird. I think we're extremely normal. They say JD Vance and I are weird, but we're extremely normal. We're normal. And they cut back and Walt says, well, if you have to tell people numerous times that you're not weird, you might be weird. So
true.
I just spent a lot of time doing that. So I wanted to talk about it, but it's just,
we're down to the wire and it's getting very nerve wracking. It just is.
It is. And, vote for Kamala, so you could, if you want to disagree with her in 4 years, do it, but you won't be able to disagree with anybody in 4 years if you vote for Trump. I don't think we'll have
any choice is better than
vote for the wall,
who would put us in mortal danger. I mean, it's that.
I have to say it. I'm sorry to be a broken record.
Yeah. No.
Go Kamala.
Vote. James, number 6.
Number 6.
Number 6, we are on episode number 3 of The Penguin on HBO Max, and it's taking its time. It is a very well thought out, very introspective show. It is, like I mentioned last time, it has nothing to do with superheroes or anything like that. It is a mafia psychological thriller is what it is. And at the heart of it is the Penguin mentoring this young teenage boy from the projects, this young black kid from the projects, whose family has been killed. At the end of the Batman, the Riddler blows up all these bombs in Gotham cities, and his family is taken out by that. So the kid is on the streets, and Penguin sort of takes him under his wing, so to speak, and is sort of being a father figure to him. Although the Penguin himself is this slovenly, he's a mafia guy, and he talks like this, and he's, ugly and greasy and everything like that. So he's not exactly the best role model for a young boy, but he's doing his best. And there's this great scene in this episode where he takes him to this really fancy restaurant, this super, super fancy restaurant, and he's all greasy and ugly, and everybody's sort of like staring at him like, ew, like giving the fart face to like, what is this ugly, fat guy doing in our restaurant? All the uppity rich people. And this young black kid, it's like they just stick out like a sore thumb, and they're talking, and they have this very sweet conversation. And then the waiter comes over to take their order, and the kid has a speech impediment. He's got a stutter, and I think that's one of the reasons why Oswald Cobblepot, the Penguin, feels for him, and he really is trying to help him. And Oz orders his meal, and then the kid orders, and he gets like a filet mignon, and he wants to get the steak frites, and he can't get the word steak frites out. And it goes on, and everybody's sort of like looking at him. And the waiter says, "You want the steak frites?" And Penguin is like, "You don't say that." He like hits him with his umbrella. He's like, "The kid will get there on his own. Don't you say that." And he says, "Kid, what do you want? Take your time." And the kid finally says, "Steak frites." And then the waiter goes away, and he says, "Listen, you don't let them do that to you. You know, you take up as much space as you need, and you get there when you get there, and you are enough. You are good enough, and you don't worry about this." And it was just this very, very sweet moment that sort of encapsulates the whole relationship that they have. Then later, I mean, the Penguin fucks up, and he's always being mean to the kid, but then he always is nice. It's this ping pong thing, but in that moment, it was a very beautiful moment, and it was a very sweet. The show is it is fantastic. Colin Farrell is just amazing. This kid's name is Renzi Feliz, the actor who plays Victor. He's really going places. Yes, Fenton?
Folie de Penguin.
The Penguin is legitimately beautifully written and just fantastically acted, and it will deserve all the Emmy awards that it gets for Colin. You know, and you can genuinely say to comic book nerds or anybody to watch this, because it's a character that is it's a brilliantly realized character by Colin Farrell.
And that is streaming on Max, right?
Yeah.
All right. Number 5.
Number 5.
Dinosaurs on Venus. Now, you may ask, why am I talking about Dinosaurs on Venus? Well, last week I made the mistake, I guess, of talking about the Tartarian Empire, falling myself down a rabbit hole. I ordered these books from Amazon. They came, and it's insane. I mean, the books are, you remember back in the days when there were Xerox shops, and you'd go into a Xerox shop and someone would be there Xeroxing some kind of mad thesis,
some manifesto, some crackpot manifesto. Yes,
that's exactly it. And because these are books like, I didn't realize this till I got them, but they're like print on demand books. So you get them, and they are like the equivalent of the sort of Xerox. They make no sense. The clarity of the conspiracy theory itself is buried under a tsunami of other related conspiracy theories. And after about 5 pages, you're like, I can't follow what's going on. Anyway, in the course of this, Dinosaurs on Venus came up. And I mean, I suppose in a way, this isn't necessarily a conspiracy theory, but it is an idea that legitimately held sway up until around 1946. In fact, as recently as 1946, you would open the newspaper and they would say, if you want a date with a Diplodocus, Venus is your destination. And the reason that they said that is that they believed that when the planets were formed, the ones furthest away from the sun are the oldest planets, and the ones nearer to the sun are the younger planets. And they had this idea that planets age and evolve, and that all planets age and evolve in the same way. So that Mars was this sort of red desert because it was old and decrepit, and Earth is in the bloom of, but Venus is our younger planet. So they're behind us evolutionary, and they thought this because clouds covered the planet. So even though Venus is bright in the sky, that's because of the light reflecting off the clouds. So you couldn't see through the clouds, and there were no telescopes that could. Well, finally, in 1962, they did a flyby of Venus and discovered that no, there are no dinosaurs.
Spoiler alert.
And then in 67, they landed on Venus, and that's when they discovered that
they landed on Venus in 1967.
They did. The Soviet. No, it didn't land. I'm sorry. It became the first. It entered the Venusian atmosphere. It did land on its surface. A Soviet probe. Yeah.
And did it take off again, or was it no?
Well, it's a pressure cooked hellscape. Its surface is hot enough to melt lead. So no, I don't suppose it did take off again. But then, funnily enough, out of that, came a whole nother idea in 1969 that maybe what happened to Venus was a runaway greenhouse effect. And that's interestingly why I'm even telling you this story, because, you know, we've had these 2 hurricanes, and thinking of the victims and people in jeopardy as a result of these hurricanes, but undeniably they're incredibly serious, intense hurricanes. And in a way, Venus has become potentially a warning of what could happen here on our planet in terms of global warming. So I thought that was kind of interesting, that a sort of what might seem like a conspiracy theory and was a wrong idea, sort of, they worked it through, and then they came to see, oh, well, you know, maybe Venus had a runaway greenhouse global warming, which seems to be currently what's happening to us. Well, right, okay. Okay, let's take a break. Chapel Rome was seen with her World of Wonder merch, guys. Clax, Shantae Sachet fan on stage at a concert in Arkansas.
Oh, very cool.
Was that you, Blake? Were you there?
I wasn't. I wanted to go, but not. Alas, I was here.
Well, I wonder if Emily was the one who sent it to her. We'll have to see if she knew about that.
Okay. She did. Yeah, Chapel performed in where I went to college, Fayetteville, and she had like the Razorback Spirit team on stage to do Hot to Go. It's really cool.
Well, this is a promo plug. I was just going to say, you can get yours at the World of Wonder store. Just go Google World of Wonder store, right, Blake?
Right.
If our merch is good enough for Chapel Roan, it's good enough for you.
There you go.
There you go.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. Fenton here with Tom and James and Blake. We're counting down the top 10 things of the week that made us go wow. All right, let's carry on with the countdown. Number 4, Tom.
Number 4.
Thank God the hurricane. I have no problem, and I feel so sorry for people who had to evacuate. I'm so glad that they evacuated. I'm so glad people took this seriously. I'm so glad we're still finding out things, but I'm so glad that minimal damage was done based on just looking like a day ago or 2 days ago. It was like, this is a 5, category 5. It just was horrifying. And the weatherman in Florida breaking down in tears. I mean, I'm not being soulless about this, but then I couldn't help it that it's that loop. I guess you can't look away, and I'm guilty of it. But first of all, Anderson, you're a dad. You're a dad, Anderson.
You aren't a young man anymore. I'm very sorry, but
it's a weird thing to just go stand in the hurricane and saying, well,
because one hurricane looks like the next. Like you could do it from 20 years ago, and it's the same. It's sideways rain and blowing palm trees. Like, yes, we get it.
Right, and you couldn't hear anything anyway. So
no. And they were. At one point, it cuts to Anderson, and he's holding onto a tree and like being blown away. Like, Anderson, stop it! I love you. You don't need this.
But it's kind of like that. Why does a dog lick its balls? Because it can. And they were very excited. They were using their cell phones and. You know that it was a feat, a scientific technological feat, and to actually pull off the broadcast that they did. And they also were saying there was high tech and also like garbage bags around cameras. But it's so I watched, I was sucked in. No news comes along, thank God no news came along. And if it was, shouldn't there be robot cameras with people talking? I know it's because when it bleeds, it leads, and we're going to watch, but it seems so unnecessary. And Anderson, especially, I worry about you, dear. I worry about you.
We worry about you, Anderson. And at one point, he got hit by something. It turns out
it was
a styrofoam cup. Thank God.
I know.
Still,
it could have been a cow. It could have been a cow.
It could have been a street sign. It could have been anything. And the thing is, we know of Anderson that this is his sweet spot. He loves doing it. He does they all do. That Bill Weir, they love this. They love it. They love it. They love it. But I did see online, it was like, we are a couple hours away from Anderson putting on that black short sleeve T-shirt. Remember for Katrina that he is waiting to bust it out. You know.
He changed this time. They went inside and changed. I'm kind of curious if they turn the cameras around. I think they're just like literally shooting out the lobby of a hotel. You know, I think they run in like at the thing as well. They should. Safety first. God bless all the people down there who are still suffering. You know, even though it was less damaging than they predicted, it's still devastating. Who knows what else this season holds? And maybe you want to believe in global warming now or not. I don't know. It's up to you. Guilty.
Number 3, James.
Number 3.
Well, it is spooky season, and I try each week to watch something a little spooky, to do some sort of horror or something or other. And to that end, I watched Salem's Lot on Hulu, which had been getting a lot of pre-publicity. People were very excited about it. Salem's Lot is based on the Stephen King novel from the late 70s, early 80s. It was a brilliant miniseries when I was a teenager that scared the crap out of everyone. There's this fabulous scene where the 12-year-old boy is in bed and he's on he hears a tapping at the window, and it's on the second floor, and he looks up and his best friend, who died a few weeks ago, is floating in the window, tapping on the window, saying, "Open the window, Mark. Open the window, Mark." And when I was growing up, my sister would sneak into my room in the middle of the night and tap on the window and say, "Open the window, Jimmy." And I would scream and cry and cry and cry. And we would do that at sleepovers. We would, tap, just open the window, Mark. So I was very excited for this. I was very, very excited for this. Unfortunately, this blows. This blows chunks. It's terrible. It is the worst Stephen King rendering of all time. If they had made it into a mini series where they had time to, but they squeezed it all into a TV movie, and it goes too fast. There's no time for any character development. There's no time for plot development. It's just.
But is there a tapping on the window?
There's a tap, and it still scares the crap out of me, and that's the only good part. Open the window, Mark. Tap. So don't see it. You can fast forward to that scene, and that's all you need to know. So
that is Salem's Lot streaming on Max,
or go back and reread the book, because it is absolutely. It's one of his that he did. He did Carrie, The Shining, The Stand, and Salem's Lot right in a row, and all of those are just absolutely.
He's such a brilliant writer, isn't he?
Yeah,
I mean, he was really, genuinely brilliant.
He was really in a zone at that point. The Dead Zone, which is the book right after that.
The Dead Zone, one of my favorite movies.
It's so good.
Good.
Yeah.
And I actually like the Stephen King Different Seasons, the one that Singer adapted. I forget which one it was called. Anyway. Number 2. Let's go on to number 2.
Number 2.
I don't even know what to call this. And I'm not even sure if it's true, because this is another preoccupation, scrolling in the dead of night. You read all sorts of interesting things on Facebook and Instagram, and I sometimes wonder if they're true. Well, here goes. Okay, so the US standard railroad gauge, that's the distance between the rails, is 4 feet, 8.5 inches. Do you know why?
No.
Okay, because English engineers designed the US railroads, and that's what it was in England. But do you know why it was like that in England?
Something to do with the king.
No. They used the same jigs and tools they'd used when they were doing the railroads as they used for building wagons. And wagons went along the street. So do we now know why were wagons that width?
Something to do with dinosaurs on Venus.
Close. The wheel ruts in the roads, there were wheel ruts in the roads. Sure. And they found that if they tried to give it a different gauge to the wagons, the wagon wheels would be like in and out of the ruts, and they break. So they just stuck with the ruts.
They standardized it. Okay.
Why were the ruts that width?
Because the wheels were that width.
Because the roads had first been built by the Roman legions when they came to Britain, and they had chariots, and that was the width of the chariots, and the chariots pulled by horses ground those ruts into the ground.
I have a question. Why were the chariots like that?
I'm so glad you asked. How did you know where I was going with this? They were just wide enough, Tom, to accommodate the rear ends of two war horses. The chariot's width was determined by two horses pulling it and the average size of their rear ends because they had to ride side by side.
Determined by two horses' asses.
Exactly. So when someone says which ass thought of this, came up with this, now it's actually got a lot to do with horses.
What does this have to do with space?
Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is
We're
the
paying
final
attention.
one.
We are paying attention. Give us that, Fenton.
Space shuttle, right? There's two big rocket boosters attached to the side, right?
They're the size of a chariot.
Not exactly, but the railroad line from the factory ran through a tunnel in the mountains, and those booster rockets had to fit on the back of a train. So you couldn't have the NASA wanted the spacer rockets actually to be, oh, look, I'm doing the Trump accordion.
Hey,
They wanted the rocket,
You're lying.
they wanted them to be wider, but they couldn't be wider because they had to go on the train, and they could have been wider, but unfortunately they had to go through a tunnel, and the tunnel wasn't that much wider for obvious reasons than the railroad tracks. So the actual design of the space shuttle we owe to the ancient Romans.
You've just outdone the speech from Devil Wears Prada where she describes where cerulean blue comes from. That's the most beautiful speech I've ever heard. I think it should be a lip sync on DragCon. I am so impressed.
I just put it out from Facebook, from Instagram.
Wow.
I've just been so taken by this story. Do you think it's true or false?
I hope it's true.
The reason why because I was just at the Metropolitan Museum a couple weeks ago, and I was inspecting. I was looking at a bunch of Etruscan chariots because I was on an Etruscan chariot binge, and interestingly, they were very small because people were smaller back then, and I didn't realize how much smaller people were because I guess the chariot where you stood, that part maybe was very small to accommodate a very small person. So I suppose the wheel length was the same width that you're talking about, but the chariot itself was smaller than I thought. So.
So
Anyway.
for next week, you need to fact check that story, Fenton. We'll be
All right.
looking forward to your report.
We're going to take one more break. Wow Presents is the place to watch Drag Race here in the US. Drag Race España on Sundays, Drag Race Philippines on Wednesdays, Drag Race UK on Thursdays, Global All-Stars on Fridays, and
Wow.
F Me new series, Drag Race Thailand and Drag Race Down Under, coming very soon. So you won't want to miss that. Sign up at wowpresentsplus.com. And when we come back after the break, the number one thing this week that made us go,
Wow.
You're listening to World of Wonders Wow Report. Things that make us go wow.
Welcome back to the Wow Report. Fenton here with Tom and Blake and James. We've been counting down the top 10 things of the week that made us go wow. It's time to reveal number one.
Number one.
Number one, we're going to share among three prominent people who in very different ways influenced and pleased and delighted and changed the world. And that is rest in peace, Christopher Ciccone, Madonna's brother, who passed away at 63, too young. Ethel Kennedy, matriarch of the Kennedy family, who I was 96, I believe. And Whitney Houston's mother, Cissy Houston, who I believe was also in her 90s, who passed away. James, any thoughts?
There is a really interesting documentary about Ethel on HBO Max that you can watch. I remember, I think Fenton, you and I went to the screening of that.
Yeah, made by Rory.
Made by Rory, yeah. And she did have a hell of a life, boy. She crammed a lot into those 96 years. So watch it. I guess her legacy now is that she's the mother of crazy pants Robert F. Kennedy Jr. But we won't.
She had many children. Don't stick her with that. Don't stick her with that.
We won't fault her for one crazy child, but she was very interesting. So there you go.
And then Cissy Houston, it's a clip that keeps playing. And listen, she had an amazing voice, amazing career, related to Dionne Warwick. I mean, just a music dynasty that gave us Whitney Houston. And to think about the loss that woman experienced in her life, it's hard, between her daughter and her granddaughter, it's hard to fathom how someone gets through that. She had great faith. She also didn't like gay people that much and was asked by Oprah, and it's playing again. You know, if Whitney were gay after her death, would that upset you? And she goes, oh, yes, it would. So, you know, God bless her. The name of her group is the Sweet Inspirations. I listen to them every Christmas because there's a song called Every Day is a Holiday, and by the Sweet Inspirations. And then Christopher Ciccone, Fenton, you knew him. We all had met him, but what do you want to say about Christopher?
Christopher wrote a book, Life with My Sister Madonna, that sort of proved to be something of a rift between them, but it was only a temporary rift. And he said very truthfully, you know, I will only ever really be known as Madonna's brother, but he was a fabulous collaborator. He designed and directed some of the early tours. He was a dancer with her on stage. Randy and I knew him a little bit. And in fact, we once went to his apartment after a party for a drink. I think he must have lived nearby us. And I just remember Randy saying, whatever you do, don't mention Madonna. And we're sitting there drinking and having a lovely time. And it's like that scene in Fawlty Towers where it's like, don't mention the war. And John Cleese is like, you know, goose stepping and mentioning Hitler. I can't remember what I said, but something came out and the room went utterly silent. And it was, like,
and just the footnote from afar is that Madonna wrote a beautiful tribute to him.
Yes.
And it just goes to show you, for all of us, by the way, because we're still here, mend those bridges, you know, find some common space with your siblings and the people that you love. Because, you know,
he was gay inspiration to her, and she gave him all the credit for that, right? Like, it's been
they danced through the insanity, I think was the quote. They danced of A's, the insanity of her fame, the insanity of their family, and they danced through it. Really beautiful.
It was. Oh, thank you, Tom, for landing that on a beautiful note. And thank you all for listening. Thank you, James, and thank you, Blake. You can listen to previous episodes on our YouTube channel, Wow Presents, where you can actually see us doing this madness. Otherwise, same time, same place next week. Until then, go out and do something that makes the world go
wow.